It's no surprise that New York City is extremely expensive. The cost of living is just through the roof here. So CNBC actually released an article talking about the worst places to rent in the whole United States. Now I know what you're thinking, whoa, Lauren, I thought this was about New York City we're talking about here. So we're gonna get into that after we look at the worst places to rent in the whole United States. So I'm gonna give you the top 10 worst places to rent in the country. So top 3 were Detroit, Newark, New Jersey, and Brooklyn, New York City. So then after that, in 4th place, you have Manhattan, New York City, Hartford, Connecticut, and then Dayton, Ohio coming in at number 6. Number 7 is Anaheim, California. Then you have Queens, New York City. And then the final 2 at 9 and 10 is Rochester, New York, and then Stockton, California. This is a very interesting list. And these places are all over the place. You have some cities like Detroit and Newark that are very different than New York City. These places are much cheaper to live. So why is the article saying that these are the worst places for renters? So what were they considering when they were coming up with this list of the top 10 places? So they were looking at 3 main factors when coming up with this list. Cost of living, the local economy there, and also the quality of life overall. Those are kind of vague categories, so let's break it down even further. So cost of living is going to consider then how much it costs to just live there overall, lease renewal rates that you're going to be looking at when you're renting, and then also just market competition from other renters in the marketplace. When it comes to local economy, they're looking at job market, income, so what average income that people are making there, and also job opportunities for growth long term. In the quality of life category, you're looking at the apartment location, so where you're actually going to be renting, the quality of the schools there in that location, and then the amenities that are also going to be there. So let's take a deeper look into the 3 boroughs mentioned here in this article in New York City. So Brooklyn and Manhattan got the 2nd spot and the 3rd worst spot. And interestingly enough, Brooklyn actually beat out Manhattan as being worse. So both of them in the earnings category actually kind of like scored points, you could say, for high salaries. So compared to the average for the US, people are making a good amount of money here. So Brooklyn renters are making $54,032 a year on average. People in Manhattan are making on average $76,806. Remember, these are just averages though. But here's the problem. Even though people are making good money here in New York City, the rent prices are so high that if you're living in this area, what you're taking home at the end of the day and potentially saving is so low. So let's look at the rents. On average, apartments rent in Manhattan for $4,614. And that's just an average. I mean, as a real estate agent myself in New York City, I could say that you see so many places well over this price, depending on where you are in Manhattan. So Brooklyn on average is going to be $3,250. And again, that's just an average. The article also states that this is going to vary based on size, quality of the apartment, and that's definitely true. Just neighborhood overall. So now let's take a look at Queens. Now let's remember, Queens came in on number 8 on this list. So they definitely ranked the best out of Brooklyn and Manhattan, but they still came in 8th place for worst place to rent in the United States. So the reason why Queens outranked Manhattan and Brooklyn was because the salary actually came in higher than Brooklyn on average. People in Queens on average are earning $62,244 on average yearly. And then the average rents come in at $2,801 in Queens. So you're paying less for rent than Brooklyn, and you're probably going to be making more money on average. So what does this mean for New York City? So the good thing is that Bronx and Staten Island didn't make this list for the top 10 worst places, so you still have those boroughs in New York City. New York City overall is a very expensive place. And if you take a look at this list on the top 10, it's the only city in the United States that has 3 different boroughs or neighborhoods or whatever you want to call it ranking here. It's kind of crazy to think about. And overall, if you consider Rochester, which is also in this list, that means that there's 4 different areas in the state of New York that were ranked on this list overall, if you're considering Rochester, even though it's not a part of New York City. It's a very different part of New York State. New York City is very expensive. And I create a lot of content on different ways that you can try to save money here and cut your costs, because it's so hard for a lot of people to make it and thrive here in New York City because the cost of living is so high. Now, I do think it is worth it. I love New York City, but sometimes you just look at the prices here and you're like, oh my God, is it really worth it? So I would love to hear from you guys. Do you think the high cost of living is worth it in New York City overall? And do you think that any of these boroughs are more worth it than the others? As always, I just love hearing from you guys.